Then Hemingway started to write, and he became quite successful and an established writer. He started to travel extensively. He hunted in Africa and the Far East and fished in numerous oceans and seas. He felt greatly attracted by bullfighting in Spain and spent several years in that country. He covered the Spanish Civil War for American newspapers and could not resist getting into the fight in Madrid. By this time he was known as Papa, within inverted commas, a bearded big man who was at ease with the soldiers. When the Second World War broke out, Hemingway was living in Cuba, and he armed his own boat as a submarine chaser and patrolled the Atlantic coast of the United States. And in 1942, he was in the thick of battle again as a magazine correspondent. He flew from England on bombing missions and became an expert on German rockets. After the war, he retired to Cuba to fish and write. And in 1952, before that, of course, I should mention some of the other novels that he wrote after A Farewell to Arms. I have already mentioned The Sun Also Rises. A Farewell to Arms was published in 1929. It is a novel about love in the time of war on the Italian front, about his own experiences. And there were his short stories. Now, his experiments in shifting the point of view and in the foreshortening time can be seen in the novel To Have and Have Not, which was published in 1937. And the next novel was equally famous, For Whom the Bell Tolls. It was published in 1940. And this is a novel which depicts guerrilla action in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. In the novel Across the River and Into the Trees, it was published in 1950. This is set in Venice, Italy. And now, in 1952, after years of work, he brought out The Old Man and the Sea, a tale of the struggle of a single old fisherman against the powers of fate and the ocean. Now, this was a story he had been trying to write all his life, and it brought him the Pulitzer Prize in the year 1953, and in the following year he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. As he was suffering from injuries in plane crashes while hunting wild game in Africa, Hemingway could not go to Sweden to receive the Nobel Award, but in a letter to the Academy, he declared that the writer's life was a lonely one, and that if he shed his loneliness, his work would deteriorate. He was still living in Cuba, and he continued writing short stories, novels, and magazine articles. He spent more and more time on his fishing boat, and he fished in the Gulf Stream in the spring and in the summer months and in the fall also. But now we come to the sad end of Hemingway's life. He was becoming old, and his old wounds were bothering him now in his old age, and after Cuba came under the rule of Fidel Castro, Hemingway and his wife returned to America, and they started to live in Idaho, the American state of Idaho. He lost weight, spent some months in hospitals, and his creative ability also seemed to have declined. And early one morning in July 1961, he slipped on the stairs in his home, and he did not wish to prolong his suffering. He took his life with a gun. So he committed suicide in the end, and thus ended a very colorful life. So this is, in short, the biographical sketch of the famous American short story and novelist Ernest Hemingway. And of course, Ernest Hemingway is regarded as a very great writer in the sphere of American literature, and his life of 62 years were packed with excitement, and he lived through adventure after adventure. He told stories of his life, of death and bullfights he saw in Spain, the fierce beasts he hunted in the African jungles, and the 2 world wars in which he played a part, and a giant 1,000-pound fish who battled off the coast of Cuba. But his writing was more than just adventure stories. He helped to set the style for the modern novel. And his prose style was kind of a lean, muscular and dramatic, and his work has been translated into all the world's major languages. His prose style can be characterized by a kind of a staccato rhythm, clipped dialogue, very short dialogues, understatements, and there are also hidden metaphors, metaphors which all work together to build up a remarkable verbal economy. And this style is, of course, seen at its best in the novels The Sun Also Rises and A Farewell to Arms. So, of course, in the Old Man and the Sea, of course, there is we can see this style which is exhibited quite well